What's up, Wisecrack? Jared here. Today I come to you as a red-blooded American to talk to you about America's second biggest export behind diabetes, freedom. America! Yeah! The current season of South Park has so far covered immigration detention camps, big weed, Chinese censorship, and now anti-vaxxers.
We can't even risk a 0.1% chance of vaccinations making our children artistic.
It seems Matt Stone and Trey Parker are reflecting on the complexities of life, liberty, and the pursuit of tegrity. So welcome to this Wisecrack Quick Take on freedom and tegrity in South Park Season 23. And spoilers ahead for the first 3 episodes. Alright guys, let's do a recap of the season thus far. Last season, Randy, incensed by a picture of a dog's butthole, fled South Park with his family to escape all the commotion and stress of city life and become a simple weed farmer full of tegrity. In the first episode of this season, Tegrity Farms is losing customers after people start growing their own weed. So Randy does what any reasonable person would do and tries to bully the government into banning the practice. That doesn't work, so he decides to become a terrorist and off the competition while Kyle and Cartman rot in a detention camp. In the second episode, Randy tries to expand his business to China along with Disney and the NBA. Selling weed gets him in trouble until he manages to woo the Chinese government by assassinating Winnie the Pooh. Having given up even more of his tegrity, he makes a killing selling to the new Chinese market. Finally, in the latest episode, Randy gloats about his China-fueled riches, while his family bemoans the farm life and Randy's increasingly broken moral compass. Meanwhile, Cartman refuses to get vaccinated by running around like a singular feral hog. The 2 big questions that South Park is struggling with seem to be, 1. How do we navigate one person's freedom interfering with another's? And 2. What does it mean to be free in an increasingly globalized, commodified world? Let's start with the first one. Randy's continued residence at Tegrity Farm speaks to the question of freedom. Embedded in most people's fantasy of moving away from civilization to do some honest work is the idea that in our current lives, we are not free. We're burdened by PTA meetings, homeowners associations, and soul-crushing work. The show has centered itself on Tegrity Farms so thoroughly that it's even replaced the traditional South Park intro. But as it turns out, moving to a farm isn't quite a magic bullet for living freely. Behind many of the issues of the latest season is a basic political problem. As political theorists, economists, and anyone who has been around someone eating durian can attest to, sometimes someone else's freedom infringes on your freedom. If, for instance, one has the right to do with their property as they choose, then my desire to build a 100-foot statue of Keanu Reeves that blocks your garden from the sun might inhibit your right to enjoy homegrown peppers or whatever. Governments everywhere grapple with this basic dilemma as they pass zoning laws, regulate businesses, and make sure their citizens don't kill each other. This question gets especially interesting with a free market, something the season is keenly interested in. The idea of a free market, as the name suggests, is that it's free. Everyone is trying to get rich while everyone else competes with them. What could go wrong? Well, this.
This is inhumane! Diego is my gardener!
In the first episode, Randy takes up some good old-fashioned monopolistic behavior and tries to ban people from growing their own weed. This is a common tactic in the world. Established companies and industries try to reduce new competition by making the barrier to entry higher. Less competition means you have a little more leeway in charging what you want. So for instance, if you're a dentist, you don't just want any asshole scraping people's teeth because they could undercut your prices. So you make a dental association and lobby the government to make teeth scraping a hard business to get into, with educational requirements and expensive licenses. Now, these barriers can be a double-edged sword. Technically, it limits competition, but then again, do you really want some unlicensed rando named Dr. Crentis drilling holes in your mouth? The point is, markets uniquely encourage people to do things that limit other people's freedoms because money. This is all reflected in Stan's bizarre speech against homegrown weed, as he tries to win support through public safety concerns.
Unscrupulous growers could use cheap irrigation and drown babies. Oh, come on.
Of course, this petty debate about weed growing freedom is juxtaposed with the much bigger problem of freedom for kids in detention centers. This idea of conflicting freedoms comes back in the second episode, Banned in China, where free acts by private corporations intersect with a not-so-free government. The episode criticizes the likes of Disney and the NBA for willing to bend backwards to appease the Chinese government. As Randy thinks he's the first to realize China is an untapped market, he boards a flight full of Disney characters and NBA players. For context, Houston Rockets GM Daryl Morey tweeted in support of the Hong Kong protests. which is a problem for the NBA because they've been investing millions of dollars into growing their Chinese fan base. Rockets games were swiftly removed from Chinese media, and feeling the money slowly drain from the bank account, the NBA officially apologized to China. And Disney, along with other filmmakers, are under constant pressure to make their films palatable to a massive Chinese audience and not run afoul of the Chinese government. Sometimes this means a rewrite or even editing a whole new version. Notably, in the Chinese version of Iron Man 3, Tony Stark seeks medical care in China in a scene that doesn't exist in the US version. Also in the episode, Stan struggles to maintain his integrity as a producer, and even a Chinese general pressure him into making a biopic that will appeal to Chinese audiences. It's likely a reference to the Chinese version of Bohemian Rhapsody, which cut out any reference to homosexuality, which is kind of important. So sure, you have a government clearly infringing the rights and freedoms of its citizens, but what about the US? This question is interesting because technically, nobody is forcing Disney or the NBA to do anything. They, as a free actor on the global market, choose to work with China. But in this basic act, is Chinese censorship trickling down to American citizens? What if a private citizen tweets support for the Hong Kong protests and is then reprimanded by his corporate overlords? Blizzard, a US company, banned a non-American player from a tournament for voicing his support of the Hong Kong protests. We could say they are acting in their own free self-interest, but they are also heavily incentivized to quash any kind of behavior not in line with the Chinese government. So what do we make of freedom then? It's a problem South Park might also uniquely understand considering its own history. While not governments, plenty of American interest groups, usually representing family values or something, have boycotted the show. The logic is the same. If you'd like to make money off our community, you have to appease our community. Not that South Park ever tried to go straight Blizzard and get an evangelical audience. In fact, their solution seems to be what they've always done, to take responsibility, but we'll get to that later. Last Wednesday's episode also tackles a central issue surrounding conflicting freedoms: the right of anti-vaxxers to be dumb, and the right of anyone else to not get polio. Cartman, afraid of shots, conjures up a series of dumb talking points to not get vaccinated.
I told the school, I said, look, you guys, I happen to have religious, moral, or philosophical convictions.
Meanwhile, everyone else in the town is worried about the danger he and other unvaccinated kids pose to the community. Making choices about our health is a cornerstone of American rhetoric about freedom. If I want to eat cheeseburgers every day and get the beatus when I'm 35, well, goddammit, that's my right as an American. It's similar rhetorically to the feminist slogan, "My body, my choice," which not so subtly adorns Cartman's shirt. Of course, the argument goes, my future case of the beatus isn't hurting anyone but myself and maybe my friends and family. But vaccines are different because vaccines stop the spread of communicable diseases. You might say, well then just get the vaccine and don't worry about me. But vaccines aren't 100% effective, they work through herd immunity.
Everyone has to follow protocol or it puts everyone at risk.
And then there's people who are too young, sick, or allergic to be vaccinated who are put at risk when too many people opt out of vaccinations. So if for me, freedom is walking around free from fear of dying from a preventable disease, those opposed to getting vaccinated are really gonna f up my day. So what are we supposed to do when we want to live free with integrity, but have to deal with conflicting pressures, whether about making money or yielding to government control? Based on the resolution of the most recent episode, it seems like Matt and Trey want us to do something that South Park constantly preaches: take personal responsibility. Cartman's mom first tries to defer to others to get her son vaccinated, eventually leading to an all-community vaccine roundup where Cartman will be lassoed, hog-tied, and vaccinated. She opts instead to take the needle for her son and get him vaccinated on her own terms, to take responsibility as a mother. Similarly, Randy's schmoozing with China allegedly ends after he makes amends with Towley and emphatically says,
Fuck the Chinese government.
This is in line with traditional South Park thinking. In the movie Bigger, Longer, and Uncut, the parents initially blame everyone from the media to the Canadian government for the bad behavior their children exhibit after watching the Terrence and Phillip movie. But it's ultimately the responsibility of the parents to make sure their kids don't suck, not TV.
You keep going off and fighting all these causes, but I don't want to fight her. I want my mom.
It could be implied then that South Park doesn't want government intervention for China or vaccines, but would prefer companies and people to simply do the right thing of their own accord. This is the show telling people like Blizzard or the NBA to step up and take responsibility. a point made exceedingly clear in their pseudo-apology to China, where they sarcastically open their hearts to Chinese censors because we too love money more than freedom and democracy. There's still so much of the season left, and so much potential for these ideas to develop. There's even a whole meta-textual thing going on with Randy constantly conflating Tegrity Farms with the show itself that doesn't quite make sense yet. But you can be sure we'll be watching the rest of the season with a close eye. Thanks everyone for watching and listening to our South Park podcast. Don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching, guys. Peace.